welcome back to another episode of Dark Crossroads. This is your host, Roxanne Fletcher, and this is the second episode of Creepy Corner, where we are reading creepy, paranormal, true crime, strange stories that are sent to us. You can also send us happy stories or anything that you want read on the podcast. So that's what we're covering today, and if you want your story read on the podcast, just email us at darkcrossroadspodcast@gmail.com, or you can message us on Facebook or Instagram, and your story will be read. I'm trying to read them all in order as quickly as they're coming in. There's so many that has already flooded in, but I am so excited to hear any more stories. So with that said, I also want to do a few shout outs before I get started. The first shout out is to Soul Prod Music. They are the producers and creators of our new theme song, which when I first heard it, I absolutely fell in love with it. I had been looking all over for a theme song for the podcast, and the second I heard it, it was just like a puzzle piece clicked, and I knew it had to be on the show. So thank you so much to Soul Prod Music. Another shout out I want to do is to a podcast that I have recently discovered titled What Even Is This Place? What Even Is This Place is an amazing podcast hosted by Ashley, and what they do is they cover all things supernatural, historic, true crime, and they also cover a lot of like strange facts, different things, kind of like us. There's just a mixture of a lot of weirdness. So if you really like all that and you like listening to us, check out What Even Is This Place. They dive into the darkest parts of humanity while also exploring the darker side of nature and our planet. So yeah, just give them a little listen when you're waiting for another episode of Dark Crossroads. And with that said, let's listen to some of our listener stories. Alrighty guys, so the first story for today is from a listener who signed their name Jingles Gentclaw. That is the best one I have had sent to me so far. Alright, so their story is, so my ex had this weirdly haunted apartment. A few times when I stayed the night, something always happened, and it would only happen to me until things got worse. I woke up somewhat in the kitchen. The kitchen was pitch black, and I saw myself standing there, but I saw myself from behind myself. My face was red, teeth bared, fist balled, and I looked like I was about to attack someone. I was yelling at a dark corner of the kitchen saying, "No, you can't have her. You'll hurt her. She's mine." She woke up from me yelling and came to wake me up, like I could see her walking up to me to snap me awake while I was watching from behind. The second one happened when we were sleeping in the living room after a movie night. Mattress laid out in front of the TV. I saw myself crouched by the bed, like I was cowering from something and making weird croaking noises while pointing to the doorway that was pitch black and gave me a heavy tingle down my back. She saw me, she woke me up again, and the day after I was completely drained. Like I could barely move because my whole body was sore and tired, like I had slept the whole day, and I remembered something happened while I was sleeping that was kind of like someone taking advantage of me, for better terms, but it wasn't in a hostile or demanding way, which made it way more weird. A few days later, when I was home, she called me up and asked me to come over because she saw a black shadow go from her room through the doorway and shout out into the stairwell. Now, the same building is completely empty of anyone living in it, and the front and back lobby both have keypads, so nobody can enter it today. Whew. Alright, so I'm no expert, but it sounds like something was taking over your body. Maybe a mild case of possession, I don't know, but that is scary, and it sounds like you haven't had any more experiences after that. I hope you haven't. If you have, let us know. Don't just leave us on this cliffhanger here. But I'm glad if you haven't, maybe that just means that that place was haunted, so I don't know. Alrighty, so our next story is from Bethany Arnett. She says, I used to work at an old hospital before it closed down. This was in North Carolina, and one night I was at the nurse's station and saw a dark figure go into a room. Our nurses were navy blue, so I thought it was her. Nope. It turns out it wasn't. She wasn't anywhere down the hall, and when I got to the room, I thought this figure went into. I saw a dark figure in front of this patient's TV. She left her TV on all night to the Weather Channel. I still thought it was the nurse, so I asked if she needed any help, even though the room was dark and I couldn't see anything. I got no response, and it freaked me out. I went down the hall for another coworker, and when we came back, it was gone. There was no way, if it was a person, they could have left that room without us seeing. We often had weird little hiccups that would happen there on night shift, like hearing sounds and voices, etc. But that was the most convincing and unexplainable paranormal experience that I had. The hospital no longer exists, and they built condos over it. Expensive, haunted condos, no doubt. Yeah, I would say that those condos are having some experience. I wish that we could get stories from the people that live in those condos to see if they are haunted. If anybody in North Carolina is listening and lives in condos that was built over a abandoned paranormal hospital, send us a story and let us know. Alright, so this next story comes from a listener named Christian. Christian says, I was washing dishes at my bar all alone. I felt something on my waist move, and I thought it was a text message. Mildly confused when it wasn't. Then, all of a sudden, a dish clattered behind me. Immediately, just assumed that I made a small stack unstable and thought nothing of it. Then, I hear a deep male sigh of exasperation in my ear, like, My reaction was completely different from the other two things. My neck hair stood all the way up, as did most of my other hairs, and I felt a chill as I whipped around. Literally, nobody was there, and I searched the immediate area for anybody. None of my coworkers, nothing. On occasion, things in my bar will also move without explanation, like a cup flying off the microwave with force with no one near it, or an ice scoop off the machine when, again, no one was near it, or a glass moving or being knocked over. It's pretty thrilling when something does happen, but there's still no explanation for it. Yeah, I would use that for some good advertising right there for your bar. Like, maybe haunted, maybe not. Don't sit at that booth. Cup flew off of that yesterday, so beware. Alright, so this next story comes from Abby Murphy, and it is titled, The Shadow Figure Came to Me. Buckle up. I'm buckling up. I sleep with my eyes open sometimes. When this happens, my brain pastes my dreams over the visual information that my eyes are taking in. That is extremely fascinating. One morning after my husband left for work, but I was still mostly dark outside and in the apartment, I hadn't fallen back to sleep yet, and I heard noises in the kitchen. From the bedroom, I could see the living area, which is between the kitchen and the front door. I listened as someone or something in the kitchen filled a cup with water twice. The second time, I heard a heavy cup full of water thud into the sink. Then, a dark figure crossed in front of the bedroom doorway, moving from the kitchen to the front door. I immediately called out, "Who's here?" And in a high-pitched, distorted voice, sounding like a voice coming through water, the shadow responded, "Baby, it's me." It was trying to convince me that it was my husband, but I knew my husband had already left for work. As I tried to scream out another threat, my voice came out distorted, and I, in quotation marks, woke up, but I was still staring at the doorway to the living room. The image didn't change at all when I ascended to consciousness. And I was still terrified at what might be out there, but deep down I knew I had passed back through the threshold and was alone in the apartment. Anyways, now we keep King of the Hill playing all night long so the shadow creature doesn't return. I was very threatened by this presence. It didn't feel dangerous, but it did feel malicious. I'm not the kind of person that's very spiritually connected, and this experience was incredibly vivid to me. I also had a pretty intense sleep paralysis incident in my teens that ended with the thing killing me by splitting my back and my soul, flying out away from the earth. Slammed awake but could still feel the wind rushing past me for about 30 seconds. Wow, these are some pretty intense stories and experiences that you had to go through. And I truly hope that Hank Hill is keeping you safe and, not experiencing anything else. I myself love Hank Hill. Funny story about that. When I was in labor with my son, they had given me some medication to make me a little loopy. I hadn't gotten an epidural, and I was doing the nitrous, breathing it in. But they gave me this pill to kind of help, and all I could picture in my head for about an hour was Hank Hill on the lawnmower mowing the lawn. And I had never liked Hank Hill. My boyfriend got me into the show, and we binge watched it when I was pregnant. So I think this is why I was experiencing it. And all I remember saying was, "It's your fault," to my boyfriend. And of course, I'm in labor at this point. And he's thinking I'm saying the me in labor is his fault. And I'm yelling this at him. The nurses are laughing. And he looks at me and he goes, "What's my fault?" And I go, "All I can see is Hank Hill riding around on a lawnmower in my head." And then everybody in the room is just laughing. And I'm being straight up serious. Like, this is what I was experiencing. But anyway, Hank Hill is definitely a comfort show for sure. This is kind of a shorter story, but either way, it gave me the creeps. So this is from Lucinda, and she said, "I was alone in a locked public library at night working on a display and watching feet running back and forth beside me. There was a World War II Spitfire pilot trapped on the site who liked to torment people. I knew this beforehand, but damn it, it was scary as hell." How creepy to watch little feet running back and forth right next to you while you're alone in a library with all these stacks of books. No, thank you. This next story comes from Lee James, and they said, "I used to be a cleaner at my local hospital. Part of my job was to clean the morgue, and one night while mopping the floor, I heard the sound of running footsteps in the passageway behind me. I knew I had locked the door, and I was alone, so I assumed another staff member had let themselves in without me knowing. When I popped my head around the corner, I saw the back end of a blue skirt flowing into the office. But when I went to see who it was, the office was completely empty. I looked around the whole morgue, but it was empty and the door still locked. After I finished my shift, I mentioned to my manager, and she said, 'Oh, you saw the girl in the blue dress. Yeah, she's been seen down here a few times.' I never saw her again, but I spoke to a porter who had seen her before there too." I feel like they should have given me a heads up. Yeah, you might see a ghost in a blue dress. Maybe it was an initiation, you had to find out for yourself. This next one comes from Kat, and she said, "I used to have sleep paralysis regularly in my teens. One time, I fell asleep on the couch and felt myself wake up, but I was, as usual, paralyzed. However, I somehow was able to view the other couch behind me through my mind, ? I saw a white glowing figure on the couch that made me feel safe. I then realized they were warning me because all of a sudden my vision floated back to the front of me, and all I could see was this demonic creature crawling its way over the top of me, right up to my ear. It felt so real. This genuinely felt like I woke up to the situation. I panicked, and all of a sudden I woke up again, still in the same position as I was. Same lighting, looking in the same direction. Still to this day, I can't describe the experience other than maybe ending up somewhere that enabled me to see those beings. I had a ton of strange experiences in that house. My friends and family all experienced regular things that made us question if something malevolent was around. Of course, being young and interested in spooky stuff, we did a few too many Ouija board sessions. No! Didn't really help the problem. No, I would say not. Anybody out there that wants to do a Ouija board, you can do a Ouija board the right way, with the right intention, but you have to know how to use them. If you are using a Ouija board It's almost like mocking them if you're doing it as a game, which everybody does. And not everybody knows how to correctly use the Ouija board. I just want to put out, like, if you are going to use so much caution and look up the right way to do it before you do. And if you have done it, I personally don't know the correct way to get rid of a Ouija board. I know you're not supposed to throw them away. You're not supposed to burn them. I don't want to say gift it because that's kind of contradictory. But a sage. Sage your house. Sage you, sage your house. Do some protection, anything. But just stay away from them. I mean, there's other ways to go about the whole concept of the Ouija board. Alright, end of my rant. Okay, I already know I'm going to say this name wrong, but this comes from a listener whose name is Andrei. I want to say it's Andrei. Andrei. If I'm saying that wrong, email me, let me know. Anyway, it says, when I was 7, I woke up at 3 a.m., the witching hour. I went upstairs since that's where I sleep, and I heard growling noises, like monsters. So I investigate, of course, why not? What was happening, and I saw 2 humanoid creatures I thought was a mom and a dad snoring. So I went downstairs, and I freaked out because my mom and dad were sleeping downstairs. So I squeezed in the bed and forced myself to sleep, and I'm convincing myself that it was just a nightmare. Then I woke up with the same sleeping position. Until now, I don't know if this was a nightmare or if this was real life. Oh, maybe you were seeing your parents' doppelgangers upstairs. Or it could have been a ghost just trying to, like, mimic your parents to get you to come and seek comfort with them. That's creepy. Okay, so this next story comes from Warren Ortega. In my room, when I lived in the city, I was laying in bed when I look up for a split second and I see my dad staring at me. Keep in mind that he's been deceased for a few years at this point. I immediately turn on the lights and I see nothing. In that same house, I had a dream that my aunt, who had passed away, was silently showing me to my room as though I was a guest of hers. On another night, when I no longer lived in the city, I went for a walk around 11 p.m., and I can see a few figures, people standing around my house. But when they notice me noticing them, they just dissipate into the shadows. Apparently, shadow people have friends. Who knew? So it seems like you're the haunted one, because you were in one house experiencing stuff, and then you move to another house and you're still seeing stuff. So something is probably attached to you. So I would definitely see about how to get that. Unless you like it, unless it's comforting to you, then that's kind of cool. It's following you around, so maybe it is. Okay, so this next story comes from Autumn, and she says that I really wanted to send in my story. It's not very scary, but 100% shifted my perception of reality and what I believe to be the game at play here. I lost a pretty important player in my life a few years back, but I was about 5 months late in getting the news. As I had been involved in something of a nasty relationship and had only just gotten out of it, the person who passed was one of the first people I went looking for after I got out of that relationship. Anyway, after I found out about their death, I was having a pretty rough go of it in the few weeks after. I was driving home from work one day and had this incredibly pressing desire to drive over to the local park where the two of us used to sneak in at night and vandalize the golf course, sand pits, just goofy pictures and words, nothing heinous, and watch the stars together something like 5 or 6 years ago. So I went. After I climbed up to this particular spot that we liked, I had my moment of just getting the grief out. Ugly crying by myself in the middle of this park. I was getting ready to leave because some other hikers were coming up the way and I didn't want them to see me like this. Just before I left, I happened to look down at the handrail that I had been leaning on, looking out over the distance of the park from my high-up vantage point. Just to the right of where I had been standing was our initials carved into the wood top rail in his distinctive handwriting. I hadn't been in that park in at least 5 years, and I certainly didn't remember him ever carving our initials into that place, but there they were, right where and when I needed them the most. The feeling that came over me was surreal. No ghosts or noises or anything overly supernatural, just the uncanny feeling that I had been led to that spot for the express purpose of closure by something greater than my own awareness. It's been a wild ride ever since. I'll give it that. That was extremely sad and also extremely heartwarming all at once. I am so sorry for your loss. I'm so happy you got out of a really bad relationship, and I really hope that you're doing great today and to have the happiness that you deserve. I'm also so happy that you got the closure that you needed in such a wonderful way. This next story comes from Kendra, and she says, I have shaken my boyfriend out of sleep paralysis. He snorts very concerningly, so I know when it happens. And it went directly over to me. I couldn't close my eyes, or else it felt like I was falling into a pit, so I was struggling to keep my eyes open, and I heard my name whispered twice loud in my ear, while my boyfriend was quietly snoring next to me. Dreams that don't feel like dreams, and waking up that feels more like appearing back in bed. Nails scraping against my door that gives me an intensely disabling migraine. A dream where I'm spinning in bed and waking up the opposite direction in bed, yelling out my friends' names who were in the dream. Waking up to something getting in bed with me and asking if my boyfriend went to the bathroom before remembering that he's not even at my house at night. So many things happened. Wow. So, I have never once heard of sleep paralysis jumping from one person to another, but it sounds like you are having a go at this. Wow. I don't know how. I should look it up. I don't know if there's a way to get rid of sleep paralysis or to help with it, but my God, you need that info. Maybe I'll look it up, and on the next episode, I will talk about that on maybe how to get rid of it. Okay, so this story comes from Jordan, and this story also comes with a picture attached. So I am going to post this picture on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and it will also, so anyway, I'll post it there, please. And if anybody wants to see the picture too, message me or email me out. I can send it to you. But this is a story. It goes, I am a photographer, and a long time ago, I went to a local old cemetery to do some spirit photography. Wow, that is really cool. While we were packing up as it got dark, I decided to take a couple more photos. Suddenly, though, a blood-curdling scream came from right behind the bushes on the property line. I bolted to my friend's car, screamed, "Get the F out of here. That was not a human." He heard it all the way from his car, which was about 20 feet away from me. This is an image I captured minutes before the scream attached. Okay, reading this story out loud and then seeing this image, I have literally, I'm not even kidding, goosebumps all over my body. Oh my God. I cannot tell. It's a creepy picture. You can clearly see a form of something. And it's so interesting that he didn't even know he caught this in the picture when he heard the scream. Oh, I wonder if it was like a siren and showing itself, because they do that. They yell and they try to get you to come and help them. Or a doppelganger. Could be anything. This next story comes from Dylan Tanner. Dylan is a friend of mine and sent this in to read it on the podcast, so thank you so much, Dylan. It goes, my parents bought this house for my grandparents about 12 years ago. My only experience was when I came home and I was the only one home. Normally, you would walk in the garage door, open the door to the breezeway, and then the door into the kitchen. But the garage door was closed, so I went in the side door of the breezeway. As I approached the kitchen door, it just slowly opened up. Not cracked, not slamming against the wall, just opened perfectly. but I thought nothing of it being in the breezeway. I walked in and closed the door behind me, and I see one of our dogs sitting in the kitchen, shaking with her eyes bugging out of her head, and I thought, what the hell is wrong with you? Fast forward about 10 minutes, and I'm upstairs in my room, and I see my mom driving up the road. So I went to help her bring in the groceries. She met me in the kitchen asking why both the dogs were locked in the garage. I knew for a fact that one of the dogs was in the kitchen with the doors closed. So within 10 minutes, they ended up in the garage with 2 doors closed behind them, where they were before. My grandparents had bought the house from a guy that they knew. He passed away in the house, and my grandfather has told me stories about him walking through the garage on a calm day, and all of a sudden his hat was knocked off his head. Something the previous owner often did to his buddies. That's cute. My grandmother told me about when she was home alone sitting in the steps and someone tapped her on the shoulders on a few occasions. She's also heard little girls giggling, jumping on a bed. 2 11-year-old girls had passed away in the house from pneumonia years back. This house was built in 1785. Wow. When my aunt was a teenager, she had a boyfriend that nobody liked. And he was at the house alone doing something, and he heard a voice say, "Get out." And he never came back. Sounds like the ghost didn't like him either. Maybe they were just helping the family out. Another little thing, my dad was there alone painting and religiously puts the stirring stick across the top of the paint can, and he turned around for a minute, and when he went for more paint, it was leaned up against the can. Also, the previous owner was a big fan of watching the Macy Day Parade and dog show on Thanksgiving. There were many times my mom would be preparing for Thanksgiving that day, and the TV would turn on all by itself to the Macy Day Parade. She said she always felt his presence on Thanksgiving, but hasn't felt it in quite a few years now. I think that's all I have for now, but if I think of anything else, I'll let you know. So, this is actually a common thing that happens, is that you'll have spurts of like a lot of activity. I hear this from a lot of people. And then it will go dormant for a few years, and then it comes back. So it's been a few years, you're saying, so maybe something will stir it back up and you guys will start getting more experiences. If you do, let me know, because that would be so interesting. They got to follow up on this. Alrighty, so this story comes from somebody who signed their name as just M. And says, I was 6 years old trying to fall asleep at night, and suddenly I hear my father calling my name. I call out and answer, but he just keeps repeating my name in the same tone without actually responding anything. I had half a mind to go and check what he wanted, but suddenly felt it would be a really bad idea to do so, accompanied by a deep dread. I pulled the sheets over my head, and then my mom started calling me instead. Eventually, the calling stopped, and I had to try and fall asleep after that. That is really creepy, and it sounds like another doppelganger. Like they're trying to call you in to get you to come and see them. Oh, creepy. I just want to put this in here for anybody who doesn't know, because I keep mentioning it, and I'm just realizing that not everybody probably knows this, but the way I'm referring to doppelganger is, according to dictionary.com, a ghostly double or counterpart of a living person. This word is a German word, and it comes from double goer, or like double, basically. Basically, what they do is they try to mimic somebody to get you to come to them or like befriend them. They literally watch other people and they learn to mimic their everyday actions, the way that they talk, the way that they look, their mannerisms, everything, to try to get close to people. It is so freaking creepy, and I hate it. It makes you not want to trust anybody, honestly. Another thing that this sounds like, which is creeping me out, is something that not a lot of people like people saying out loud. So I'm just kind of like, reverse the wording. Walker of the skin. Walker of the skin. Put it together, what that actually is. I don't want to say it out loud too many times on this podcast, but those are also kind of like a doppelganger where they basically form into another person. All right, it sounds like that. It's creepy. All right, guys, so these were some heavy stories that were sent in, and I love hearing all of these. So please, if you have a story you want on the podcast, send it in. I can't wait to have more Creepy Corner episodes with everybody's stories. Creepy, happy, funny, paranormal, true crime. Like, here's a title. Have you ever had a run-in with a murder or a suspected murder? If you have, send it in to darkcrossroadspodcast@gmail.com. Did you have a sibling that was possessed? If you did, send it in to darkcrossroadspodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear it all, everything. And we believe you, which is a crazy thing. All right. Yeah, so if you want a place where you feel welcomed and understood and believed, send me in your story, because we're building a community where all of that is happening. And if you also want to be a part of a community like that, please join our Facebook group, follow and like there, start having discussions. There's a huge discussion group already happening. It's called Dark Crossroads Podcast discussion page, literally. Also, Instagram and Twitter is a great place, and our TikTok too. So follow us on there. You can rate, review, subscribe to us. We're having a free giveaway. It's happening tomorrow for anybody that wants to. What you have to do is download 5 episodes, then rate and review the podcast, and then follow us on Facebook, and then you qualify for the free giveaway. It's going to be a t-shirt from our store that is opening tomorrow. And we're going to choose a winner from the reviews of the podcast. So yes, so if you want to do that, we're so excited. When we pick who it's going to be, we're going to email them and get their information. So, and we also have a Patreon for anybody who wants to donate to the podcast. Any amount helps. It all goes to the podcast. So yes, I know I say this every time, but it really does help. Every little bit helps. Even a follow, it helps push us into higher up. Even every rating, review, everything keeps us in the top and helps us to keep making more episodes. So all those little things are free ways to help support the podcast. And there's also the Patreon, which helps keep it going with research and equipment and yada, yada, yada. So with all of that out of the way, come back for more, because we're going to be making another episode soon. And I hope to hear from you guys, and I cannot wait to read all these stories coming. So send them on in. All right, we will talk to you later, and keep on creeping on, guys.
This episode is brought to you by the Dark Crossroads Podcast. Hosted by Roxanne Fletcher, this is your stop for all things true crime. The New Bedford Highway Killer, the strange case of Paige Renkoski, to the infamous and unsolved stalking case of Dorothy Jane Scott, Dark Crossroads is a truly deep dive into the real crime stories that frighten and fascinate us. A great production, entertaining to listen to, so give it a listen yourself. I just hit subscribe, as should you. All links to the show will be provided in this episode's description.